היי, בונה, גבוה, ביצועים, סטטי, קורא עכביש. Oh, English, perfect. So I won't have to translate all the slides for you. That's great. So, hey everybody, good after pizza time. I'm Uri. We are going to skip the long introduction about me because we have a lot to cover up and it's going to be super live coding. So wish me luck. And I want you to give a big, loud applause, not to me, to Joe in the other room. I want him to hear us applauding to him. Joe, this is for you. I hope you heard that. Oh, they are also applauding to him. Great. They heard us. So today we are going to talk about some use case that was not possible with AngularJS, but now it is possible with the new Angular. And to explain that to you, I'm going to show you my personal website as it used to be a few months ago. So this is my personal website, and as you can see, it doesn't look very modern. It was just one big HTML file that I edited manually. And we are in 2017. You don't expect like your site to be just one giant HTML file with a lot of styles and to have to edit it manually. Like we have great tools like Angular, we have components, we have all the tooling that comes with Angular. And I wanted to use that on my website. But then I also had another thing that I wanted. I wanted my website to load real quick, so you don't have to wait for all the JavaScript to download to your browser and execute. I want you to enter this web page and immediately get this HTML. So I basically wanted a static website. I don't update it that frequently, but I wanted it to be structured in a very easy way to have a few JSON files that I could update and add new links instead of editing the HTML directly and doing a lot of copy-paste. And what I'm going to show you now is how I used Angular to achieve that. So that was basically the problem, or I put some bullets. So I really wanted to replace what we have seen in the previous slide with a new component-based website. I wanted to have one component for each section of my website and to store the data, the actual links inside JSON files instead of like having a big chunks of HTML for each of them. And then I also wanted the content to display. Wow, that was a nice effect. I will use it again later when it's time. Thank you, Rada. So I wanted the content to display immediately as you go into the site, so you won't have to wait. And finally, I didn't want to set up any server or Node.js to do stuff. I just wanted to take my website, my web page, and deploy it directly to GitHub Pages or Firebase. So how did I do that? First of all, we are going to do it now to replicate the setup that I created for my website, but we are going to do this from scratch. No Angular, no CLI, no seeds, just starting totally from scratch. So the other goal of this talk is to show you how Angular is wired up, how to build your own Angular setup from scratch, and that's what we are going to do. And we will see how the application is actually wired, how everything connects together. And finally, we'll meet a new tool called Fusebox. Have anybody heard of it before, Fusebox? Just a few, so I won't even ask if anybody used it, because that won't be too many people. So we are going to start a new application. I'm going to create a new directory, and there will be a lot of live coding. And then the next thing I'm going to do is just to install all the dependencies that you need to run Angular. So that's basically core.js and zone.js are just polyfills we are going to use. RxJS, I think there is a great workshop going on RxJS right now. So if you are here, you're already missing it, sorry. And then all the Angular parts. It will take, first of all, I need to initialize a new NPM project, and then I can install all of those. It will take a few moments. That's Yarn. Have anybody used Yarn before? So basically, you can see, switch to Yarn. It's much faster than NPM. I got Angular installed in less than 10 seconds. I'm also going to add TypeScript as a dev dependency, because we're going to use TypeScript. And it's done. I'm going to open it up in code. So basically, I got it, a very basic project setup, just package.json, all the packages I need installed, and we are ready to get going. By the way, I will share the slides with you, so you will have all the commands and everything, either in the slides, either in the repository with all the code that I'm going to share soon. And now we got just the setup. We are going to create the app skeleton. For that, we are going to create an index file. So let's create an src directory, index file. So yeah, I told you we are going to do it totally from scratch. That will be the AngularUP static. Let's add some. Okay, so we have the index HTML. That's cool. What else do we need? We need some Angular module and Angular component. Let's do that. So I'm going to create an app directory. I'm trying to replicate the same directory structure that the Angular CLI uses. So I'm going to import ng module from. As you all know, Angular apps are organized into modules. So we are going to set up the main one. And we are going to use the browser module because we are running in a browser, or at least will be for the next few minutes. So that's from platform browser. I'm really grateful that I have TypeScript, so I don't have to remember all of that. So yeah, that's basically my very basic module, the basic unit that I need to get my app started. And then I would need something to bootstrap the app with, some component that will be displayed on the screen. So I'm going to create an app component. So again, I'm going to import the component decorator from the Angular core. And then I'm going to declare my app component. And we're going to make it as simple as possible. So we'll only have the template, export app component, and the selector. It will say hello, and then some name. So we'll actually see that the code is running, and then we'll use, okay, we have the name. And then we also need to give it a selector. So the index.html file will include some component, let's say AngularUP app, AngularUP app. I don't know, my accent is not perfect. So we'll use this element to render the application, and then we'll set this up as the selector for the component. And finally, we need the word class. Thank you for telling me. We are doing this together. So if you see I miss anything, please tell me. Luckily, I got TypeScript to back me up. So basically, we created a component. We created a module. We are going to wire them together. So we are going to app component. Yeah, auto import works. We are going to tell Angular to use this component to bootstrap the application. And now we have everything we need ready. We have a module, a component, and an index HTML file that will start the application. Except we still can't run it. We also need to set up a main file that will bootstrap Angular and start the application. So let's do that. We are going to create a main.ts file. And the first thing we need to do is import some. Oh, thank you. So you learn how to tell me when I make mistakes. Thank you. Thank you very much. So main.ts. We are going to import a few polyfills that we just need. Core.js ES7 reflect, and also the Zone.js polyfill. And now, finally, to the real business logic. We are going to import some cool thing from the Angular platform browser. Platform, right, good catch. That will be a platform browser, I guess. And then we are just going to call the Bootstrap module to bootstrap our app. That would be app module. And we need to make sure this import comes after the polyfills and not before them. So yeah, basically we got everything set up. We have a script that loads the module, that creates the component, and everything is wired, but we still can't run it. And the reason for that is that it's TypeScript, and browsers can't yet consume TypeScript directly. So the next thing we are going to do is setting up the build. We are going to set up the TypeScript compiler to compile our code to JavaScript. And for that, we are going to create a tsconfig file. This file will tell TypeScript how to set up the project. And I told you I'm going to do everything from scratch. So I'm going to cheat here a little and just have the autocomplete type this for me. But basically what we are saying, we tell TypeScript, hey, write all your code into this directory, all the compiled code, use the common JS module structure, use node modules because we use NPM here. And then these 2 lines enable decorators, so we can use add component and add module. And then this setting tells us that we want DOM support, like document get element by ID and all the DOM methods, and ES 2016 because we need promises that are part of ES 2015, and otherwise Angular doesn't work. So basically that's it. The next thing would be to actually run the TypeScript compiler with TSC. Let's do that. Let's add a script to our package.json that will do that. We'll call it build. Come on, nobody catch that it should be scripts. npm run build. And waiting a few moments. Yes, all was good. And we got the files compiled into JavaScript in the this directory. So thank you. One applause. I hope it will get better. AngularUP. Okay, but thank you for the applause, but we still can't use it because we still need to load Angular. We got everything compiled, but the Angular source code is inside node modules, and we need something to pack everything together into one file. So do you have any idea what we could use? Yeah, but I told you we're not using Webpack. We're using something new called Fusebox. So I will tell you about it real briefly while I install it. I'm going to install it with Yarn. And basically, Fusebox is an alternative to Webpack. Webpack is the default bundler used by the Angular CLI. And Fusebox has nice features. It's another bundling solution, but it also super fast. It takes, you'll see in a moment, it takes just a few milliseconds for the application to recompile. It takes advantage of caching to make any changes, even in large-scale applications, recompile real fast. And it also has a hot module reloading built in, as we'll see. It's simple, but it has really powerful configuration. We are going to see it in a moment. And finally, it has a built-in TypeScript support, so it basically supports TypeScript out of the box without any configuration, loaders, and stuff. So the configuration file is going to be much simpler, as we are going to see in a moment. Let's create the configuration file. So unlike Webpack with Fusebox, the configuration file actually is a JavaScript file that actually imports Fusebox, sets it up, and runs everything. So again, I'm going to show you real quick what it does. So basically, we import Fusebox, set up the source dir, the output file names. We also set up a dev server. This is the port. And then we set up two bundles. One would include only the vendor files. These symbols basically tells Fuse we want to take only the external dependencies from main.ts. And then we have the second file, the app bundle, which will include everything that is loaded inside main.ts. Those symbols basically means to execute the file as soon as the page is loaded. You can read about them in Fusebox documentation. And finally, we are going to set up a watch on those files, so if they change, Fusebox will recompile it, and hot module reloading, as we'll see in a moment. And once everything is configured, we are calling fuse.run to run the thing. So let's try that. The running Fusebox, once we have configured it, is super simple. Simply running node fuse. So let's do that. We'll add a new start script here, node fuse, and then we are going to run npm start, and hopefully we'll get it running. So we got this link. We are going to click on it, and not there yet. We are still missing one step. As you probably remember, where is my code window going? Okay, here it is. As you probably remember, we put the index file in the src directory, but then Fusebox is actually building the files into the this directory. And we also don't load the scripts, the bundles that Fusebox created into the index.html. So we need to do two things. First of all, if we look inside the this directory, you can see these app.js and vendor.js bundles that are generated by Fusebox. So we would need to load them into index.html, src app.js, and then also the vendor one. Get away, move to cursor, the vendor.js. And finally, this is a step we currently need to do manually, but we need to copy this index.html file to the this directory, so it will be served by the .html by the Fusebox dev server. In a moment, we are going to set up the build to do it automatically for us, but bear with me. Let's first check if the build is working for the development mode. So to rehearse what we did, we set up Fusebox configuration to build app.js and vendor.js with all our code and dependencies. And then we have set up the index.html file to load those two files. And now we are going back to the browser. And it was localhost 4445. Yay, loading. And it didn't load Angular. No provider for compiler factory. What could the reason for that be? Let me see. we have main. Oh, it should be platform browser dynamic. My bad. Yeah. So basically, I just got the Bootstrap code incorrect. It should be platform browser dynamic, which means run on the browser and compile the Angular templates on the browser. Now, back to the browser. And we need to restart Fusebox, I guess. Yeah, sometimes hot reloading doesn't work. OK, so it worked. We got a low Angular app. Thank you. And the next thing I want to show you is actually how, or why doesn't it work? The next thing I'm going to show you is how we use how cool the live reload is. So I'm going to change here. You know what? I will just change the name from AngularUP to AngularUP. And have you seen that? Like the moment I changed the string, it just updated. No need for refresh. I didn't need to configure or set up anything fancy. It works for most use cases out of the box. So that's one of the reasons I like Fusebox. It's fast and you get hot module reloading. So we are halfway through. We have created an app, set it up from scratch, set up the development server, and the next thing we want to do is to actually set it up for to get an index HTML with all the content pre-rendered, so we don't have to do it on the client side like we do right now. And for that, I want to introduce to you Angular Universal. Angular Universal OTB, which means outside the browser. It basically allows you to run Angular outside the browser, which means you can run it in Node.js. It started as a community project, but now it's part of Angular and is maintained by the Angular team. And basically what Angular Universal allows you to do is to take your application, run it, and create an HTML file with the output, which is exactly what we need. So we are going to use it for build time rendering. We are going to render our application at build time. Setting up Universal is quite easy. The first thing we would need to do, we would need to create another entry point for our application. We are going to call it app server module. So we had the app module that bootstrap the app on the browser, and we are going to create another one, app.server.module, appserver.module.ts, that will bootstrap the app, the Angular server, and we also need ng module. It's platform server. And this will basically do the same as the app module. We'll call app server module. We are going to use the server module and also import the app module. So we are actually extending the app module and adding the server module to the list of the dependencies. And we also need to specify the bootstrap component again. So that would be the app component. And this is just to make TypeScript happy. Is it happy now? Yes. Yeah. OK, perfect. So we set up the app server module. And now for the real interesting part, we are going to, just before that, we also need to tell the app module that we previously created that it's going to be run in, that's the app module. It's going to be initialized from a page that has already been rendered by the app module. So it will be called with server transition, and we need to give it an app ID. It has no meaning. I don't know why we need to give it, but that's basically all the setup that we need to do for server-side rendering, or in our case, build time rendering. Now for the real interesting part, which is braces. What's that? And how did I get to this slide? I know. No, it's happy. You're just too strict. Okay, so for that we are going to install another tool called TS Node that allows us to run TypeScript code directly inside Node, and we are going to create a build file that we'll call universal and build the HTML file. Let's do that. So first of all, we are going to yarn add -d TS Node, and we are going to create this build script. The first thing we need to do, this is going to run inside Node and build the app. So the first thing we need to do, we still need to get the polyfills there, because zone and reflect are not available in Node as well. And then we need to import a function from Angular platform server that will load the app, compile it, and render it. So it's called render module. And we basically call render module with our app server module that we have just created. We need to give it a couple of parameters. We'll see in a second. And then this function actually returns a promise that will give us the index.html file after the app has been run and all the components have been rendered. So what we are going to do is to result just console.log the result. Okay. And then we are going to load the index.html star SFS from. We are going to load the index.html and give it as a parameter to this render model. So it's going to get the input document. And it has to convert it to a string. And I think we are ready. Let's run it and see if we get the app HTML as an output. Semicolon, thank you. You are a good audience, thank you. Okay, we are almost there. We are going to call for the build TS node /build, and we are going to run npm run build. And we can see we actually got the component saying hello AngularUP rendered. So the final thing we need to do in order to write that to the disk is just to write it to the disk. So we are going to call fs.write file sync and write it to disk/index.html and give it the result. So basically that's it. We are going to run npm run build. And we finally got this folder with the index.html file that has the content pre-rendered. And then we can start building our Angular application on top of that. So let's summarize. First of all, the problem is now solved for me, so you can go to my website, urish.org. I also have a beacon on my head that broadcasts this URL to you as we speak. So if you open Bluetooth and location on Android, you will probably receive a notification. And you can see this new website I built with Angular 2 and pre-rendering. And a few words about where we could evolve this. So, oh, they are applauding already. So we could easily now deploy this index.html and this static website to Firebase and GitHub pages. There is also a nice Fusebox plugin you should check called ng2 Fused. It allows you to load templates and styles by just specifying their path in Fusebox. Setting up ahead of time compilation. And then pre-boot is another cool thing you can add to ease the transition between the static file to the Angular application once it's loaded. So this is the code repo. I'm going to share the slides right now on my Twitter. And I want you to go home with two things. First of all, wiring Angular here yourself is not that hard. It's pretty easy to pull the pieces together and get the application started. We have just seen it done here in like 20 minutes. And then Angular Universal finally enabled things that were not possible with the old AngularJS, like building static websites for blogs, landing pages, documentation sites. And finally, Fusebooks is really nice, so you should check it out. So thank you very much. And I just posted the slides to Twitter, so you can find them on the Twitter, including all the code from this talk. So build great things with Angular.